If any of you guys saw my review of the Limit episode from The Amazing World of Gumball all the way back to the second Cartoon Crisis, it's where I picked that episode over the episode The Hero, and for me personally, thinking about it more and more, it really shows. This episode is one of the worst episodes of The Amazing World of Gumball for good reason. Whenever I think about this episode being one of the worst, it's not because of how it's executed, but it's the fact that it's treating it seriously when it comes to Gumball's relationship with Richard, who is his father. But at the same time, this episode can't be able to do that right, knowing full well that both characters were never in the wrong. It's most likely the fact that Gumball was forced to be in the wrong due to Nicole completely causing so many child neglect cases, to the point that it really goes to show that this was before the Loud House's No Such Luck episode, well, it involved child abuse and child neglect. I need to get this out of the way. I don't like Richard as a character, especially the humor that he provides. In my review of The Limit, he was at his worst, and the fact that even if he didn't do anything wrong in this episode, it's difficult to root for the guy, knowing full well that Gumball and Darwin were forced to set up this whole rescue plan in order for Richard to rescue them from a huge car destruction or car demolition incident. And for me personally, it really feels like that they clearly had to think of something on their own without the helps of their family, mainly Nicole and Nais. All because they insulted Richard at the playground. I mean, granted, it's one thing to not insult your father or mother, but the thing is, he's speaking the truth, and Gumball stated this in front of Nicole and Anais, but they just don't even care. All they care about is that they should appreciate their family no matter what. The thing that aggravates me the most is the fact that Nicole and Anais aren't aware of the fact of what Gumball is saying is the truth. And the fact that Nicole has insulted Richard in the past and future goes to show that this entire episode is just there for the sake of showcasing what child neglect is like when it comes to Gumball and Darwin taking care of themselves. If this is the indication that you should never insult your family members, you need to understand that there are a lot of worse alternatives than that. The fact that the first half showcases that life is being way too hard on Gumball and Darwin doesn't make it entertaining. It just goes to show that they can't be able to get out of any situation, even in the most insignificant bad things that they do. Granted, Darwin didn't insult Richard completely, since that he's mostly the voice of reason and also constructed the rescue plan at the end. But let's not forget that he doesn't deserve any of this, unlike Gumball, because in the second half, regardless if he was being truthful in the beginning, he just acts nonchalantly and casual just to view Richard as a useless father while Richard is just trying to find different solutions to save them from getting killed. I don't know about you, but the fact that they make Gumball like this is like they're trying to make us hate Gumball and trying to root for Richard, but not in a way that makes me so convinced that Richard is a better father in the Wallace's family. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's difficult for me to root Richard even though he didn't do anything wrong in this episode. The thing is, the dysfunctionality in the Wallace's family just goes to show that they're just doing everything to make any plot possible, and the fact that The Amazing World of Gumball has more episodes in the other cartoons that I've seen recently really sums up that this is basically the good version of Teen Titans Go, mainly the fact that they're original characters than characters that we're highly familiar with. Granted, this show came out 2 years before Teen Titans Go, but the more I look at it, it really feels like every time I see the Wallaceans do something like this, regardless if it's illegal or not, is well they're throwing everything on the wall and hoping that everything will stick. But the ones that fall off the wall is this episode. Trust me when I say this, every time I think about the first half of this episode, all I can think of is, it doesn't belong in an episode like this. With an episode called The Hero, where Gumball and Darwin are trying to make Richard the hero towards the end, goes to show that it's difficult to make Richard the hero, knowing full well that it's difficult for me to sympathize with him, along with the fact that they're insanely hammering in the punishment that Gumball and Darwin are dealing with without the help of their family. Usually I would be extremely offended ever since I watched this episode for the first time, but nowadays, after watching all the bad episodes from other shows, I'm desensitized. Because this episode to me is really, really difficult to go against, knowing full well that everything I've seen in other shows, especially episodes from this show, it's nothing special. Like, I think that the reason onto why there was no charges against Nicole is because, well, to be perfectly real, the Amazing World of Gumball isn't a world of stable citizens. Granted, there are a few good characters, but considering that a few episodes have different ideals and are really good once they're executed right, every time I think about this episode, it really feels like the only way for the characters to be arrested is if the plot is demanded them to be arrested. And in all honesty, I'm just starting to convinced that Nicole not being used for the majority of this episode until the very end really makes me convinced that they just didn't know what to do with her, knowing full well that they don't want her to accept the fact of what Gumball said to her was the truth. Or is the truth exactly. And at this point, the song that Richard sang in this episode doesn't really feel meaningful because it was poorly executed due to terrible writing and poor directions of the characters. Like, it would have been one thing if Richard did a terrible thing and regardless he may humiliate his sons, but to be perfectly real with you, it really feels like that the only way for this episode to make Richard a likable character is to give him the support gift-wrapped for him. Mainly gift-wrapped for him. Gumball and Darwin were doing it for him towards the end, and for me personally, it really feels like that the only way for him to be good is if anything is gift-wrapped for him. It really feels like that this show's portrayal of Richard is that the only way for him to do any good deeds at all is if anyone helps him out. And for me personally, it's not really a good idea to make Gumball and Darwin treated miserably from Nicole, all because of the fact that they insulted him at the playground. Like, it's impossible to think that Richard, regardless if you may enjoy him or not, doesn't change the fact that he is difficult to be adjustable when it comes to the good deeds. And believe me when I say this, I really have a difficult time to find any likability involving Richard. He's not hateable, but at the same time, it's difficult to find any qualities in him. Especially when they try way too hard to make us feel sympathetic towards Richard during the climax. Because for me personally, when you literally try so hard over an insult or the characters not respecting with each other completely, that legitimately, then you don't even understand how difficult it is to take the definition civilized seriously. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's always been thrown out the window when it comes to these episodes. Overall, this episode is worse than the limit to the point that there's literally no hero being made in this episode, especially when these characters are gift wrapped in to a person to be a hero. I'm giving this episode a 2 out of 10.